Checking, checking. Maybe a little down. Checking, checking. Budo, Budo. 1, 2, 3. How's that? Good? Okay. Welcome, everyone, to a Saturday with Clear Mountain. For whom is this their first time in Blowdale? That was a weird sentence. Anyone? Okay, so men's bathroom is over here. Women's bathroom is over here. For those of you who know Longpo Sumedho, the most senior Westerner in our tradition, he was an altar boy here when he was 11 years old, so the Dharma moves in full circles. A few announcements. We actually didn't have any announcements, and then we realized we had a lot of, well, one big announcement. Bonnie, Christina, please. Let's get a mic to them.
Good morning, everybody. We did think it was a no announcement day, but we do have a few. We are growing and expanding, and as that happens, our needs expand. And we have had some volunteers step up, and we just would like to acknowledge them. Ryan and Amanda, if you would stand, I'm going to put you on the spot.
We will be embarrassing you, yes.
Yes. They have volunteered to be on the Saturday setup team, and Ryan is our mic runner. Kate and Tyler, if they're here, Kate Davies. They both are the leaders for the Upasaka group that meets every month on the first of the month. And Adrian, he's not here, but he is our new photographer. So at the end, we can give all of these wonderful volunteers 3 big sadhus for stepping in and being very, very generous with their time. I do have one more announcement. There was a request this morning that if you are sick or feeling like you're sick or need to wear a mask, please do so, and I'll make sure we have enough masks. But it is really high flu and cold season, and people just don't want to get sick. And there is also hand sanitizer on the food table. Please use it or wash your hands before you enjoy the potluck. Here's Christina.
I have a couple more volunteer positions people who have stepped up to announce. If you're on Zoom joining us digitally, raise your electronic hand so we can acknowledge you that way. And then maybe we change the view so we can see that. Okay, we also want to honor a couple of people who have had to retire their roles. So on the Gratitude Steward team, Dave Tatro and Joseph DeSisto Ailing has been serving in that role for quite some time, but they had to recently retire that role. So we just want to express a deep appreciation for what they've donated towards that role. They were very pivotal in putting together the guidelines for that position as well. And we've had 4 new volunteers step in to replace them. So if you're here today, Jen, Scott, please stand also so we can acknowledge you. Jen, Scott, Victoria, she's digital. So if you're here, Victoria, raise your electronic hand. And Judith, if Judith is here, please stand too. And then we've also had a new video short steward. Rod, if you're joining us digitally, please raise your electronic hand so we can acknowledge you. And then we have a new role that we just stood up, the administrative steward. They are taking over our email inbox and greatly assisting the monastics in alleviating them from having to do communication and administrative duties. And that's David and Tran. And I don't know if they're joining us via Zoom today, but wanted to acknowledge them as well. And now we can express 3 big sadhus for all of these folks.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Yeah, we were trying to think of the list, and it just kept getting longer. And that's really beautiful. It is really beautiful how many people give their time to this community. And it's also a sign of a flourishing kind of architecture of faith that's beginning and hopefully will hold the monastery in the future as well. So just really honoring those who stepped up. Thank you. Another person we've never honored, actually, Trenton's mom, Shannon, if you wouldn't mind standing up. We're going to embarrass you just a little. Years ago, we mentioned we're looking for a conservation organization to partner with, and then Trenton emailed me and said, my mom knows Forterra's vice president, and hence our communication and partnership with Forterra. So Shannon, 3 big sadhus, and for giving us Trenton. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. For those of you who don't know what sadhu means, Ajahn Kovilo translates it as, yeah, that was awesome. And he's a Pali scholar, so you can't question it too much. Ajahn Kovilo and I are both, as many of you know, on 3-month winter retreats. So we are coming in for these Saturdays, but generally alternating which one of us comes in. You get me 2 weeks in a row because Ajahn Kovilo is on a Goenka retreat, but he'll be here next week. We'll also have a land visit next week after the gathering, at least the plan is. So going to visit the prospective home for Clear Mountain. We should have an ecologist expert to give us a tour that day, so it'll be extra special. We hope you all can make it. It's a really precious piece of land with a lot of, it feels like a lot of metta on that land. Additionally, just hoping to encourage in our social hour after the gathering, if people just encouraging first, once again, the first person you talk to, try to have it be someone you haven't spoken to before, and just notice these worldly dynamics playing in to even dharmic spaces such as cliques, popular, unpopular, who's especially good looking to you and who you might kind of move towards a little faster than to others, and just this is a space that's very special, how we hold relationship in this space. So first, encouraging people to really keep conversation focused on Dhamma, and a good question is just what's coming up for you in the week, what's alive for you, and then to notice that tendency to kind of click or to think of ins and outs, or to really look for people who you might be attracted to in a certain way, and just this is a space where people get to be held in a different sense, and Kali and Amitta, spiritual friendship, is based not on resonance of personality, but on our ability to uphold and encourage each other in shared spiritual value. So really holding that preciously, or with a great deal of care, and knowing that this is one of the few spaces I've seen people who would often be dismissed for being a bit awkward or quiet get to unfurl their full wingspan, and making room for that. It's really important. So just holding this with care and making room for everyone in this space. And I think that's it. Oh, and if you want to tune in more, just hoping people are tuned into our online forums such as WhatsApp and Discord. That really helps us keep you informed as to what's going on. And if you haven't joined our community page yet, send your photo and a Dharma quote under 200 letters to stewart@friendsofclearmountain.org, and we can put you up on that. Okay. So we'll chant together. Oh, and today's going to be a Q&A session, so if you didn't have anything to proliferate about during meditation, but a question kind of bubbles up, just know there should be a chance for that. Let's chant the 5 subjects for frequent recollection, page 55. Page 55, if you're joining on Zoom, the link to the chanting book should be in the chat description. Handamayam abinha pachuekana patang banamase. Jara Dhammo mi jaranganatito. I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. Bayadi Dhammo mi bayadinganatito. I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. Marana Dhammo mi marananganatito. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. Sabehi me pihehi mana pehi nana bhavo vina bhavo. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will become otherwise, will become separated from me. Kamma sakomi, kamma dayado, kamma yoni, kamma bandhu, kamma patisarano, yang kammang karisami, Kalayanang wa papakang wa tasadayado bhavisami. I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. Ewang amehi abinhang pachuwe kitabang. Thus we should frequently recollect. So that's a sobering chant, but the first four, the situation, and the last, the fact that we can affect the heart and life through our action and intention, is the escape hatch. And there's just something grounding about coming back to reality. And in Buddhist countries, when Longpo Sumedho went to Thailand, he asked the monks there, one of them asked, what do your angels look like in the West? Well, he said, well, they have these little harps and these wings. And he said, what do your angels look like? And the monk said, well, it's aging, sickness, and death. And these are called the Devaduta, the heavenly messengers in Buddhism, because they remind us to look beyond the conditioned realm, as fraught as it is, to something transcendent and bright that is beyond all these ups and downs, and that's why they're heavenly messengers. So we'll meditate together, and it will be a meditation about death, and it's one I try to do about once per year or twice per year. If it gets too much, please feel free just to put it down and come back to breath or loving kindness as you want. Just begin by setting your body upright. Drawing the lower spine like a spring, supporting the back. Pressing the top of the head up to the sky. Dropping the chin slightly. Noticing and softening any tension in the jaw. The belly. Just ask yourself what kind of breath would feel good right now, and allow the body to respond naturally. Come to center. For those who want, you can follow along with this meditation on what it is to let go. Cheryl, can we turn down the mic just a little bit? Thank you. So imagine you're in a white hospital room, in a white gown on a white bed. There's no windows, no doors. You're alone, and you're about to die. You've tied up all your loose ends, you've said your goodbyes. There's no one coming to visit. It's just you and your death. Just very soon. If that's a bit stark, you can instead imagine yourself on a bed of moss by ferns, in a grove, by a stream under the branches of an oak, starlight glimmering through. But similarly, you're about to die. So your last few breaths. In these final few moments, you know it's just you and your death. There's no one else here. It's something you have to do alone. So begin by relinquishing your attachment to all your physical possessions. Give them up. The car, the clothes, the instrument, the pictures, the phone, the house. Let it all go. You can't take it with you where you're going. It was never yours anyways. So give it back. Feel how when you do that, there's a lightening in the heart, in the chitta, a brightening. What it means to let go. You know the moment's closer now. It's almost time to let go of everything. You know these are your last moments. So let go of all of your roles and labels. Father, son, mother, daughter, friend, teacher, your job, Democrat, Republican, Buddhist. You can't take any of it with you. So let it go. And if you find there's a relationship that's hard to let go of, just imagine giving the person a little wave and a smile, letting them know you'll be okay. But let go of the label. You can't take it with you. And let go even of your name. And feel if it is there for you, a brightening and lightening in the chitta, again, the heart, as it lets go. If that's what's there for you. And if you have trouble with this one, don't worry. It's common. Just hold metta. All your roles, all your relationships are the labels around them, at least. The love can remain. These are your last breaths now. It's almost time. You know your death is almost here. So let go even of your body. It was never yours to begin with. Give it back with care. If you can, feel, if this is your experience, just the chitta, bright, unentangled, luminous, light. Letting go. What were you so afraid of? Can you thank your teachers for such a beautiful death? And then from that place of unentangled knowing, how the unentangled heart can relate back to the world. Gradually open to feel all those around you with compassion. May they be well. May they be happy. May they be peaceful and filled with loving kindness. We have a Dharma talk requester. Who's brave? Okay.
Good morning. Thank you. I've studied aging, birth, aging, sickness, and death, and had never experienced. The sensations were quite remarkable. My solar plexus were very activated, and I felt myself just maintaining a wonderful inner smile and welcoming the experience. It was very lovely. Thank you.
Who went for the hospital room and who went for the Grove? Hospital room? No hands? All right. It's more than I thought. Okay. Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So we have a Q&A session today. Just find it's important now and again to really open up space for people to bring up whatever's on their mind and hearts. So if you have something that's been playing on your mind or bubbling up and you're feeling a bit shy about bringing it to the group, just know that it's a gift to do so. Odds are if it's in your mind and heart, it is likely in someone else's or will be or has been. So just encourage people to be willing to speak into the space. And if you're on Zoom, you can raise your cartoon hand as well. If you talk often, maybe just consider making a bit more room for the quieter folks. And just while you're deciding if you want to put up your hand, I'll share one story of Longpo Sumedho, the most senior Western disciple in our lineage. Who here has heard of Longpo Sumedho? Yeah, so like I said, he was an altar boy when he was 11 years old here. We got to see him when he came back, and we took him to the bubblegum wall at Pike Place. And he said, well, this is gross. But a year before he arrived at Wapapong, Ajahn Chah's monastery, they were building a kuti, a hut, and they were building it at standard Thai size. And Longpo Chah said, no, make this one 7 feet tall. We're going to have a naga coming soon. And naga is the word for an elephant or a sort of a dragon-like large creature. And then a year later, Longpo Sumedho showed up, and it was the perfect size kuti for him. So take that as you will. He was in the Navy when he discovered Buddhism. He read What the Buddha Taught by Bhante Rahula, and he was halfway through the first page, and he thought, well, I'm a Buddhist. And we're indebted to him. What would people like to talk about? How was that meditation for people? Great, a little difficult, really difficult. It's okay, wherever that thumb is on the mark. Yeah. Did anyone have some really difficult, was it quite hard for anyone? You can just subtly put your hand here if it was. Okay. It's a powerful one in letting go, I find. And I like to usually do it about twice per year to sort of Marananusati and Anicca Sanya. Contemplation of death and contemplation of impermanence are two of the perceptions that the Buddha really praised. And they're intimately related to gratitude. There's a famous sutta many of you might know where the Buddha asks the monastics, how often do you practice recollection of death? And one puts up their hand and says, I think how grateful I am, how lucky that I have these 7 days, this week to practice. I might die within these 7 days. And the Buddha says, you are negligent. And then another monk raises their hand and says, I think how grateful I am to have today to practice the Buddha's teachings, how lucky. And the Buddha says, you also are negligent. And so on and so forth, the monks kind of trying to get to the right answer until one finally says, I think for as long as it takes to inhale, how lucky I am to have this long to practice the Buddha's teachings, or as long as I have to exhale, or as long as I have to swallow a morsel of food. And the Buddha says, you are one who practices heedfulness of death correctly. And it's so important to see that in that, the phrasing is intimately related to gratitude, how lucky we are to have this long to practice these teachings, this breath. And a recollection of death, when people would come to Wat Mapjan, where I ordained, asking if they should be a monk, Longpo Anand, my teacher, a disciple of Longpo Cha, would advise us to recollect death every day because it helps win the chaff from the grain of our lives. It's hard to get caught in your partner not doing the dishes or the small annoyances when you realize that you both only have a brief moment on this life, in this world together, and to use it beautifully and well, and to know what's meaningful and worthy of your death. So bringing those recollections to mind and feeling what it is to let go, I think are really important to do regularly for people. So, okay. Can you say the names of the people so we can select them correctly? Okay. Let's go for Mary first, and then we'll try to alternate online and in person. Oh, actually, that's Nathan, I think, right?
Right. Yeah.
Nathan, go for it, Nathan.
Um, I've been reading a lot about acceptance this week and watching Tara Brach, of course, and I feel confused about, or maybe not confused, but acceptance means recognizing the parts of yourself that you may not or like, or accepting what's happening here now. So my question is, can you speak to the issue of acceptance and letting go? Because for me, if I'm accepting like something bad that comes into my mind, I'm holding it gently and I'm not thinking of it as being mine, I'm not owning it, then how does that fit or does it fit with acceptance? I mean, letting go.
Thank you. So, I think it's first important to speak about the Buddhist framework of karma. When the Buddha was asked what his teaching was, he says that it's a kamavadi, a teaching of karma, of the efficacy of action. And what that means is we're given these past conditions, and we have so many kind of circling around our histories and bodies and conditioning and personalities and families and thoughts. And the term for the result of a past action is vipaka, which means the fruit. Karma is actually the cause of the action usually. So when a past fruit comes into being, a thought of anger or greed or addiction, worry, there's no use berating oneself for that. We have no control over our vipaka in the past. Longpo, we can't even think of what is going to come into our mind tomorrow, let alone, and even 5 minutes from now, even this next moment, you don't know what's going to come up in your head. Ajahn Amaro says it's not just like having your radio on, it's like your neighbor's radio. So this is the sense of acceptance, is when a vipaka comes up, it is what it is. Conditions are what they are. And much of our inability to let those things rest or let them go is actually not understanding how they came into being. Forgiveness, letting go, in Buddhism is intimately related to the aspect of discernment or wisdom. And one quality of wisdom is understanding conditionality. And that means like what gave rise to something. And it sounds academic, but a beautiful insight you begin to have as you practice is that when you understand how conditions gave rise to something, the heart is broad enough to hold anything, almost anything, maybe anything if you have right view. And I think we all understand that, like, if you find this just your anger keeps coming up and you're just really kind of averse to it, this we'd call, there's two levels of dukkha in Buddhism. There's the first arrow of dukkha, of suffering, which is just the vipaka, the fact that the conditioned realm of the mundane falls apart, disintegrates, doesn't match our expectations. It's changeable and changing. Then there's, and this is what it is, an arahant, an enlightened being experiences this too, but with grace. The second level of dukkha, and that's called the dukkha, the suffering of the three characteristics of impermanence, not self, and suffering. It's just part of the conditioned realm. The second level of dukkha is the dukkha of the Four Noble Truths, which is the extra level of suffering added by unwholesome craving, tanha, thirst. There is wholesome desire, chanda, in line with Dhamma, but unwholesome craving or thirst is the ugly layer we add on to that initial dukkha. So it's when not really liking something becomes hatred, or when kind of being attracted to something becomes greed. We can often in Western culture really group suffering into one category that we romanticize, like, what is life without suffering? There is poignancy and there's an honoring of the suffering of experience, but that extra second arrow that we shoot ourselves with constantly, as the Buddha said, that's ugly, unnecessary, and prevents us walking through life with grace and selflessness. Why that's relevant is the first level of vipaka coming up. This is just the conditioned realm. It's our old conditions coming, and you can understand how they came into being. And when you understand, oh, like the anger I'm feeling, I can't understand why I'm so angry, and feeling that extra level, the second dukkha arrow of like, I don't want to be this angry. And then you realize, oh, I didn't have breakfast this morning. And just how the heart's like, oh, well, that makes sense, I guess. Like, I'm still kind of grumpy, but like I get it, and just the immediate, how conditionality, understanding, or like when there's someone, and I've used this example often, someone in your life, a boss, a child, who's just behaving in a way that baffles you, and it's just like, how can they be like that? And then you understand their history, or their childhood, or what's happening at home. And there's just a sense of, oh, of course, that letting go. And that motion is really key because it allows us to interact with the vipaka that comes up and accept it and receive it. And understanding the conditionality is important because if an old pattern, what we call a sankhara, a personality program running, comes up, like the extrovert, that you always have to be the center of attention, and then you understand that as a child you lived in a big family and you had to stick out from the other 5 siblings to get any sort of care, and you can welcome, this is the internal family system's wisdom, is like you can acknowledge the need, the function that pattern had, and accept it with metta. And the difference then is you accept and see it. And by doing that, you don't take it as yourself. Because if you don't see it clearly, you automatically relate it usually to a self. You identify with it. What Jung said, what we don't acknowledge becomes our destiny. What we don't acknowledge becomes our destiny. And loving kindness is a really beautiful valence to have for mindfulness of what comes up. Ajahn Brahm calls it kindfulness. That's step 1. But then there's feeding into it. And this is what we stop, is the creation of new karma, the creation of new patterning is mental as well in Buddhist thought, as well as verbal and bodily action oriented. So when the angry thought comes up, there it is. It's an old, you had no control over it. But notice the moment where you start feeding it, where you start buying into it, where you start having a conversation. It's not just you kind of like, you know, giving Mara a cup of hot cocoa and sending him on his way, or, you know, saying, okay, thank you for what you did for me in the past, old Nisapo, whatever. I actually don't need to do that anymore. Just thank you, but it's okay. When you start having a dialogue and saying, yeah, you're right, that was absurd, and you're creating new karma in that moment, and that's where we need a Buddhist framing to understand the difference between accepting, and different language will have different valence for people. Like sometimes accepting is the right word, but other times letting be, letting go. And this is, the Buddha would do this. He would, for a term for nibbana, he would use synonyms. He would say another term for nibbana, which just means cooling. Can you let the pattern just cool? Is chaga, which is relinquishment, letting go. And it means both giving and giving up. It's where Mahayana and Theravada merge. And the difference, they talk about the aspect of generosity, dana, which many of you know that term. But people don't know the word term for chaga. But dana is like a Brahmin standing outside, the commentaries say this, standing outside their warehouse giving out alms. Whereas chaga is them just throwing open the doors and saying, take whatever you want. And there's this generosity of heart with letting go of these things and just letting defilement go. Open the hand again and again, relinquish. So whatever language you need to use to let that old stuff not stick. And then to really be careful about not feeding it. That's the difference. And that's where we really need to make a distinction between accepting what's there, letting go of what's there, letting what's there be. Longpo Sumedho says, patient endurance is peaceful coexistence with the unpleasant. And he'll often have a phrase, he says, it's like this. It's like this. Ajahn Buddhadasa said that if he was stuck on a desert island with one thing, it would be a little necklace that said, it's like this. Ben Yang Ni Ang is the Thai. And then Longpo Sumedho also says, it's never been more like this than it is right now. So, and the Buddha pointed to this. The word the Buddha used for himself, tathagata, means tata, which means thus. And agata either means come or gata, means gone. So the thus come or the thus gone. And thusness, touching back into that ground of being, it's like this, ta-ta-ta. And that's the grounding of the heart. It's a word so basic, it's almost an onomatopoeia. It's the drum of the deathless. It's like this. This is why things are as they are. And just letting that go, not feeding those conditions. And sometimes that requires a lot of restraint. If anger's coming up and wants to be expressed, or suffering or doubt is really coming at you, as a practitioner, you need to know in those moments, often your one duty is to touch the Four Noble Truths and the duties associated with them. And the duty of the First Noble Truth is to understand dukkha and just not react from that place. Hold still, don't create any new karma, and trust that the old karma will burn itself out. And just thinking that way, like this, I'm burning through old karma. The conditions in my life right now are wholesome. All the inputs are wholesome. This is old karma I would have to move through, probably. Unless you became enlightened, in which case it's like skip to the end. So we should all go for that, but it's a helpful recollection. It's a long answer, but Nathan, does that ring, or does it land well at all?
Yeah, thank you. I love the way you kind of brought it all together.
Okay, good, yeah. Yeah, accepting, letting go, letting be. Yeah. Bonnie, did you have a question? Let's get a mic to Bonnie up here.
Many people get to experience a beautiful death. Many more get to experience a violent death. They're bombed, they're in a car accident, they're murdered or killed. I've always been curious, what happens to their consciousness? They don't have the time to process. They don't have the time to let go. As that beautiful meditation walked us through. second part, or second question is, in the Buddhist psychology or in the Buddhist practice, is there any, like in the Christian or Catholic practice, a last sacrament? Is there any special chant? Is there any special prayer? Is there anything to practice at the end that is the equivalent? Yeah.
Thank you. So first, to put some framing, in Buddhism, these chants, these images, these rituals are technologies of the heart. There's a Jungian substrate to the psyche I often reference that speaks in the language of embodiment and story and ritual. So just to frame this by saying that these are elements we use to steer the heart in its deepest times and to hold the most sacred moments. Ajahn Amra once had a vision of Master Hua, one of the most famous Mahayana monks, coming to him. And Master Hua said, "Bright, loud, and mobile is the false. Subtle and indistinct is the true." Bright, loud, and mobile is the false. Subtle and indistinct is the true. And for me, like, the reason we have so much framing of ritual is because we're holding, you need to protect the subtle and indistinct. It needs a frame. It's like a cathedral. Only by kind of the walls do you hold out the bustle of the street and have room for the rose window, the bloom, and the liturgy to rise. With death, so if you don't believe in rebirth, it's fine. You're not required to be here. In that case, this can just be, how do I experience a beautiful last few moments, and one that lets my heart pass away at peace? Because that's one of the biggest gifts you can give people in your life. If you've been with someone who's lived a beautiful ending of their death, I remember my grandma. There's some people, it's like as they near death, their skin almost becomes translucent and the veil becomes very thin and there's just something shining through the eyes. If you can give people that with your death, that is such a gift of equipoise. I also speak about, people are concerned often about dementia, Alzheimer's. Many of us will probably encounter that. And one really important thing to do now is cultivate loving kindness in your life, because that substrate of emotional well-being and brightness lasts beyond the brain's fading, like sunlight illuminating mist at dawn. And Ajahn Pasano, one of my teachers, references meeting Mahagosananda, one of the most famous monks in Thailand, at the end of his life, and his memory was totally gone. But he said all that was left was metta. He was just an avatar of metta. So in traditional Theravada folk belief, they say that last moment is key to the next rebirth. It is the distinguishing factor. The Buddha isn't, the suttas don't quite bear that out. And I'd say a good way to think about the death moment, and this is from the Abhidhamma, but I think it's very good, is you have a herd, a corral of cows, and you've got some black cows, which are bad karma, and you've got some white cows, which are good karma. And your whole life, you're putting cows in that corral. And every now and again, you'll make a really big wholesome action or a really big negative action. That's like a really big cow. That's a really strong cow. And then at the end of your life, you don't know which cow is going to get out of that door first. If there's a lot of strong, bright, happy cows, one of them will probably muscle to the front and make it through. Or if there's a lot of just white cows in there and a few black cows, they might get, odds are the white cow will get out. But so there's a beautiful sutta where the Buddha is trying to put at ease his cousin Mahanama around this fact. Although Mahanama was a stream enter, so he was safe in terms of his rebirth. You've had a glimpse of Nibbana, and that irreversibly changes the rebirth process. But he said, but I think this applies to people with faith. He says, Mahanama, don't worry. And Mahanama says, look, I'm afraid if I go in the city and my mind's distracted and I get hit by a cow there's a lot of cow deaths in the suttas, actually, a surprising amount. We're okay right now. But, or a cart, I don't know where my mind's going to be. And the Buddha says, do not worry, Mahanama. Just as a pot of ghee dropped in a cool lake would crack open and the shards of clay fall to the ground while the ghee rose like a white orb, even so, when this body lies on the ground broken and consumed by jackals, the mind that's nourished by faith, by virtue, by learning, by wisdom, will rise. Your death will be a good one, Mahanama. And I think we can take a lot of heart in that, actually. Like, if you've encountered these teachings, there's such brightness in you. And you remember the Walk for Peace monks. Who's been following that? I know I asked last week. So if you listen to the testimony of the monk who lost his leg, he talks about skidding over the pavement after being hit and being absolutely sure he was going to die. And his mind just became completely calm. And I've heard that very often, is that in those last moments, regardless of exactly how the death happens, often the mind will become very calm in those last moments and old karma come to fruition. If it's a really traumatic death, that's another thing, and we just have to rely on our practice and hope that, do our best to avoid such things. But I'd say that having a lot of faith in those white cows and putting as many as you can in terms of those last moments of death, we do have funeral chants, but I'd say really just reminding yourself of the good you've done. And for people close to you, this is something you can do for them. Like, we had my uncle passed away recently, my step-uncle, and they just had a poster board at the end of his bed with all the images of people he'd loved and things he'd done. And he was very much not a religious man. He had a pile of Buddhist books on his bookshelf, and I said, "Did you read all those, John?" And he said, "Oh, they all have the same plot." I'm not They all have the same plot. Oh, no plot. Yeah, that was hilarious. But people are more open in their last days and months to these things than you might think. And if you have something to give them, even if they've never wanted to talk to you about your Buddhism or your spirituality or whatever the heck you're doing over there in Seattle, knowing that this might be the one chance you have to offer that to them, and better to try, at least gently, for one moment to see. Because I gave my uncle a Buddha image, and it was the last thing he was holding in his hand. And I chanted for him, and he never, he was not a religious man, but that was, in those last moments, people open. And there's a sutta called the Akankeya Sutta, where the Buddha says, "If you should wish, when my relatives pass, may they remember me with faith and their heart go to a good destination. Let one fulfill the precepts, not neglect samadhi, meditation, delight in empty huts, practice well." And for me, that's the Buddha clearly saying, even if during your life your relatives and friends and spouse and kids don't get what you're doing because of you, because of religious difference, because of alienation, there's a moment of clarity after death where your practice can impact them and guide them deeply, where there's a vision of clarity. And so yeah, reminding yourself of the good things done, keeping kind of chants going, and then there's a beautiful book online. It's a little booklet called With Each and Every Breath. You can Google it. About Longpo Pasano was called to walk a man named Jay through his execution. He was in San Quentin and had been sentenced to death because of a robbery years before, although evidence kind of pointed to the fact that he didn't actually kill anyone. He just wouldn't give up the person he did it with. And he just Jay meditated hours every day and became one of the most loved people in the prison. And in his last days, Longpo Pasano came to him and counseled him to keep the light nimitta in his heart because the breath would be gone during execution. And yeah, there was a moment at midnight. This is the start of I'm writing Longpo Pasano's biography, and this is the start of it. There's a moment at midnight, it was just storming and raining, and there's a bunch of protesters outside of San Quentin trying to get the execution stalled. And at 12 midnight exactly, the rain stopped on the dot, right when he was executed, and it was silent for a time. So, light and refuge. And I talk off sometimes about, I was on Tudong in the jungle in Thailand, and an elephant came when it was dark. My teacher told me, "Don't go back to your little umbrella tent before 10 p.m. And of course, I had gone back to my umbrella tent by 10 p.m. And was meditating, but still. and I heard this elephant coming from afar, and I really got, I mean, it's the most scared I've ever been. I mean, they're really dangerous. And it was playing with the tent of a monk next to me who was gone. We asked why later, and Longpor Anand, my teacher, said, oh, they don't like the color blue. There was a blue tarp over it. It's like, huh, okay. Um, but I just took refuge. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa 3 times. And the deepest wave of calm I've ever experienced just rushed through my body, and everything went quiet. And the monk and the elephant wandered off. So take that as you will, but refuge. You have refuge. Another question online, maybe. Mary?
Hi, Sean. Hi, it's Mary. Hi. Thank you. Thank you so much for this the meditation and answering of the questions. So I have a question that may be very esoteric and maybe too academic, but it's also very experiential. Going through the death meditation, I'm following right along. You know, we're going through the possessions, the roles, the people, and I'm left with these qualities in my heart space, you know, love, the really pleasant life, good life lived. And then you say, did I hear you right? Give up the chitta. So now give up the chitta. Did I hear
Say
you
that
right?
last part again.
Give up the chitta. Now you're resting in your you're frozen here. You're resting in your chitta. And now even give that up. Did you say
Mary?
that? Oh, we're
Sorry,
breaking
Mary,
up, aren't
you
we?
cut out briefly. You're back now.
Okay. Yeah, you were
But can you
frozen
repeat
too.
the last 30 seconds? You said what was left in your heart was.
Okay, the qualities of loving kindness, let's say. Okay, but then so I'm thinking that's my chitta, that heart space. And then I thought he's frozen again. Then I thought I heard you say, and now give up that, give up the chitta. Did you say that? Did you say give up the
Mary,
chitta?
it cut out
Yeah.
again a little bit. Can you type it? Everyone was like, gave a collective sigh because it seemed like such a good question. Can you type it?
I
Mary, can you
will,
type it
I
into the
will.
chat
Yeah, okay.
while we're waiting for that cliffhanger, everyone? Um, do we have a question in the audience or online?
Is this on? Yeah. During your during your meditation, I had this image of emptiness as being nothing but love. That everything is filled in with love, and I think that that's kind of where I'm at right now. But that's what I felt. That emptiness is not empty; it's filled with love. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And this maybe echoes a bit of what Mary was beginning to speak to as well, is when you start letting go, you're not left with nothing. And it's the problem with the term empty is, empty of self, but filled with reality. And when the Buddha gives a simile for the enlightened mind, he talks about light that lands on nothing. And it's interesting because we have the triple gem. And the beauty of the triple gem is instead of reifying the ultimate, which is beyond words, we're given things which refract the light. And you can see it shine through when you read the Buddha's words or see an image or, and it's funny, there's a sutta called, where the Buddha's with a monk on his deathbed called Vakali. And he says, Venerable Vakali, do you have any regrets? And he says, I wish I'd seen you more, Lord. And the Buddha says, what do you care for this putrid body? One who sees the Dharma sees me. The Buddha's still here. I mean, whatever that means, but when you begin to touch that deeper resonance of what you let go, you're not left with nothing. The light, the palm is filled with sunlight. It's more subtle, but you begin to feel that too. And the chitta begins to resonate with it. And yeah, in the Buddha draws a very clear line. There's a sutta where someone asks, what's the difference between the formless attainments, the base of infinite space, etc., and the Brahma Viharas, the abodes of loving kindness, and a bunch of other things? And it says, or maybe it's Venerable Sariputta, but says, you know, there's difference in some ways, but really they're similar in a lot of ways. And greed, hatred, and delusion are absent in all of them. And he says the apex of the heart's release through love and kindness is the beautiful. The apex of the heart's release through compassion is the base of infinite space. The basis of the apex of the heart's release through rejoicing is the base of infinite consciousness. And that can seem like very esoteric and academic, but what I think it means is like there's a back door to this spaciousness and stuff, and it's love. And yeah, if you invoke love in those places when the mind's calm, it's right there waiting for you. You're just unkinking the pipes and making room. It's like a Stradivarius. You don't have to fill the Stradivarius with music. We spend our lives stuffing the Stradivarius full of like tissue paper and all this, you know, love letters, and we just ruin the notes. But just clear it empty and keep the framing, and the note rings on its own. So, yeah, it's good invoking that. When the mind is calm, that's when you want to bring in those recollections of love, and that's when it'll calm even more. In the Anapanasati Sutta, the Buddha says, first you brighten the mind, then the mind calms. So when you find your mind's like very calm with the breath, and you're like, what now? Or a little disoriented, because all of your kind of framework has fallen away, that's when you can drop in a thought of love, and the emptiness becomes a doorway. You're invoking something, and then as the mind becomes, because it's luminous and malleable, it's like dropping a bead of golden dye on a clean cloth. It just permeates out. And once the mind is luminous, then it is willing to concentrate very quickly. Yeah.
I mean, it really describes how to access love.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mary, did you? Can we check if she managed to type her question? Can you read it out loud and through the mic?
Yes. Did you say to give up the chitta? Isn't that what carries on, or is that a misunderstanding? The qualities in the chitta and the developed wisdom question.
So, who here knows the word chitta? Okay. It means mind, it means heart, it's a bit of both, and it's a notoriously difficult to define term. I once asked Ajahn Jayasaro this question, like, what is the chitta? And he said, you know, when I was abbot at Nanachat, I got 2 questions more than anyone else, any others. Where's the bathroom, and what is the chitta? and it's important because the Buddha really, the chitta is resonant with, you begin to approach this asymptote of language with the chitta, where it's not associated with a person. Longpor Suchitta says, people don't become enlightened. And so I don't want to speak about it too much, but I didn't say to give it up. I don't think you could. But the best simile I've heard for it is a pond. And when the Buddha talks about chitta, it almost always has often it'll have a quality to it, like the chitta with anger, the chitta with aversion. And that's like the pond being stirred up with waves. You can see the surface very clearly because of the waves. But as the chitta becomes calm, it reflects the sky perfectly. That's wisdom. The natural quality of the chitta is clear seeing. So the chitta that's completely calm has that quality of wisdom, and it reflects the sunlight. Love, Cheryl. The Buddha said what carries from life to life is craving. Like a flame from one house would jump to another house. And if you don't believe in rebirth, life to life, you can just think about this in your daily life, like the craving that draws us onto new birth as the parent, the victim, the self-righteous, whatever it is, the consumer. But that's craving. They talk about, they've done an analysis of dopamine levels when you're purchasing, and independent origination, the moment of peak dopamine is when you're right at the cash register about to buy the thing. And that's the becoming moment, bhava. And then birth is when you've swiped the card and you've been born. So it's craving that carries. But as to where the chitta fits into that, the Buddha was really clear that it gets to a place beyond words. Yeah. So yeah, you can't give that up. But you do, that practice lets you feel more of the chitta's resonance because you've let go of what's not the chitta more and more. And you feel brightness and love and wisdom and lightness. That's all there, spaciousness. think we have another, please. Wait for a mic. Let's get so the Zoom people. Second. No, it's fine.
Hi, I'm Ren. Thanks. I was just thinking about the pragmatics. You mentioned the hospital room, and I was thinking about, the distractions. You got the people next door, they're on the other side of the curtain, and then you got the TV, and then you've got maybe pain and pain meds, and then I was thinking about 100 Years of Solitude, like drifting, like the desire to drift, really, and fantasize. And I was thinking, God, on my deathbed, will I still have the same struggle to stay in the moment? So, those are just pragmatic concerns, I guess. See if you had any comments on that.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that there's not a TV blaring next door to you in this image. I mean, part of the pragmatics is, like one thing they have in Thailand, they have such a more wholesome relationship to death in Thailand than they do in the West. Like, people see death, and, in the West, like, health insurance gets you a lot of amazing things, and if you're not careful, it can end your life, being shocked repeatedly, going to code again and again and trying to keep you alive at any cost. And people can navigate that as they will, but I think it is worth really taking into account how and where you want to die, if you can have any agency in that, and how, when people should let you go. Because I think those things do influence you in the end. I think with pain meds, the practicalities of like, what's the most clarity you can have? And sometimes pain will be destroying your clarity. And sometimes, but really drugging someone up with an amount of, morphine or something where they're completely, your mindfulness is gone. Like, that's not great. And often pain's what lets us let go of the body a little bit in life. But I've honestly never been through these things, and I can't speak to chronic pain. So I think everyone has to navigate that one for themselves. But I'd say you pointing to the metric of clarity is really significant. And yeah, like whatever supports you can have. I know people who play chanting repeatedly. I know people who really have, they're taken a picture of every senior Ajahn that had visited Wat Pah Nanachat. He'd taken a picture with them, and he had just a book of all the pictures of him with these monks he loved. And he just would turn through it day after day and like just remember the goodness in his life. And whatever you can do to kind of remember that goodness, I think that's really relevant. So yeah, I don't know if that addresses exactly what, but taking into account those external elements is, I think you're right, it's important. Yeah. Maybe one more. Kirk. Gail, please. Sangvara. Gail's attending to her dog, Annie, who's close to passing away.
So I thank you, Ajahn. I love this meditation, and it's dovetails so nicely with those of us doing the 5 invitations. This is the first time that I've done it that I had so much gratitude and thanksgiving come up. And so I just wanted to comment on that. And I find it such a relief to visualize lying there and giving up everything. And there was just a warmth that came to me this time. And I guess I felt supported and non-judgmental, like I've done all these things in my life that I regret, or it was, no, I didn't go there, and felt surrounded by much more metta. And so with that, and you mentioned Annie, because she's pretty much on doggy hospice. I wanted to thank you, Ajahn, and everybody in the Sangha that's reached out to me and is sending us metta, because it's just making. Hold on, I'm going to just see if I can pick her up and everybody can see her. Just a sec. So it's, she's just being such a good dog. And yeah, my heart is just so touched by all of your care and this community. Thank you so much. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, Gail. Let's give 3 big sadhus for, I wish we had a better word for this one right now, actually, but let's say metta. How about that for Annie? 3 times. Metta, metta, metta. Annie's got so much Buddhist love coming her way. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, people caring for an animal dying. I mean, it's yeah. As a pet, that's winning the jackpot of like having someone pour that much goodness into you at the end of a life. And in terms of the animal realm, which in Buddhist conception is very fraught and frightened and difficult, having the rebirth of a pet in a Buddhist household like that's really something. There's a funny Buddhist joke. All dogs are set to be reborn as humans next life, so they're like really excited about not that interested. All right. All right, I think that's what we have time-wise. If people have anything else they want to talk about, obviously you can talk to me now. You can come to our Wednesday evening Zooms. If you have anything private you want to talk about, just message Ajahn Kovilo or myself on Wednesday evening Zoom, and we'll stay on after and talk with you. And if you ever want to come down to Alms around at 7 a.m., weekdays, I know it's early, but Ajahn Kovilo or myself will be there most weekdays. Check the calendar, and we can just talk for an hour or something. Thank you all. I also want to bring into our, well, actually, this is a good time for it. Let's read the Blessing Braid. This is just a web page we have under support, where there's the names listed of those we want to hold in our hearts and dedicate the goodness of our practice to.
Okay, we have Venerable Fra Ku Ajahn Kemasanto, the abbot of Dhammasala Forest Monastery in the Lansing area of Michigan, passed away on the morning of January 23. Please spread metta, from John B., who met him last year. Luz Molina Aguilar and Fernando Medina. Please spread metta to Fernando for the loss of his grandmother Luz, the WhatsApp admins. Amy Yao Lee, she's going to have surgery. Please spread metta, from Chinita and Michael Allen. For Lovely Haynes, age 84, getting eye surgery next week. Spread metta for his swift recovery. From Alex H., granddaughter. For Spooky, dearly beloved 16-year-old black cat, passed away yesterday morning of oral cancer. Please spread merit for a fortunate rebirth. From John Dave Allison and the Ajahns. Kagasiri, recovering from car accident. Spread love, from Ajahns. Emily, dear Katie, nearing end of life. Please spread metta to support her on this stage. From Yannette. Ernie, our wonderful dog. Our lovely greyhound Ernie died naturally at home from colon cancer. Wishing him a human rebirth, and may he discover the Dhamma. Sharon and Alexander. My brother Peter, dealing with serious illness and traumatic grief. From Mary Roy. Mo Willis, 16 years old, lost his mom suddenly on 1/11/26. From Mary Roy. And Susie Stalvey, passed on 1/11/26. May she have a favorable rebirth. From Mary.
Do we have any other names we'd like to bring into this space? Dave and Will. Scott Massell and Shala, navigating cancer. Zach, who has a back injury. Troy. Carol, recovering from cancer surgery yesterday. Chris and Jessica just lost 2 of their children. Alex.
Beloved brother Pete, having surgery next Wednesday from Elizabeth.
Thank you. Mike? Mary. Okay. Just hold those names in our hearts for
Father
about 30
George.
seconds together. Page 50. Just as rivers, page 50. And for chanting, V's are usually W's in the Thai way, and TH's is T, not Th. We're Theravada, not Theravada. Page 50. Yata varivaha pura paripuranti sagaram. Just as rivers full of water entirely fill up the sea, evam eva hitodinang petanang upakapati. So will what's here been given bring blessings to departed spirits. Ichitang patitang tumhang. May all your hopes and all your longings, keep 'em me wasami jatu, come true in no long time. Sabe purentu sankapa. May all your wishes be fulfilled. Chandopanara soyata. Like on the 15th day the moon, many jyotira soyata. Or like a bright and shining gems, sabetio iwachantu. May all misfortunes be avoided. Sabarogo inasadu. May all illness be dispelled. Mate bovat wantarayo. May you never meet with dangers. Sukhitika yuko bova. May you be happy and live long. Abhiwadana silisa nichang pachaino. For those who are respectful, who always honor the elders, Chattaro Dhamma vadanti, ayuwano sukhang balang. For are the qualities which will increase life, beauty, happiness, and strength. Bhavatu Sabhamangalam. May every blessing come to be. Rakantu Sabhadevata. And all good spirits guard you well. Sabha Buddha Nubhavena. Through the power of all Buddhas. Bhantoti Bhavan today. May you always be at ease. Bhavatu Sabhamangalam. May every blessing come to be. Rakantu Sabhadevata. And all good spirits guard you well. Sabhadhammanubhavena. Through the power of all Dhammas. Sadasoti Bhavan today. May you always be at ease. Bhavatu Sabhamangalam. May every blessing come to be. Rakantu Sabhadevata. And all good spirits guard you well. Sabhasanganupavena. Through the power of all sanghas. Sadasoti Bhavan today. May you always be at ease. And that dedication of merit is just a way to recollect that our practice isn't just for ourselves, it's others, and to remember others as well. It can mean a lot for people to know you're holding them in your heart. And I know we talked a lot about devas and rebirth this session. Just to say, it's with Buddhist thought, it's completely right just to come here and practice and meditate. These are part of the Buddhist framework, but one can also take them as psychological principles to explore as well if one's not ready to look at them in other ways. But I really love talking about devas, so I'm not going to shy away from it too much. We like to have something we do where those who have been here brave, if you're and how you heard about us, if yeah, so if people are new, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves to us, if you want, please. Welcome, Aaron. Welcome, Steve. We love Carl and Jean. That's great. Oh, hey. Ryan, welcome. Stephanie, welcome. Ah, Dave, welcome. Yes. The Sam Harris crew, yes. Okay. You might be our fourth or fifth Dave, but you're definitely our second Doug, at least. So, okay, please. Oh, welcome. Welcome, you too. Oh, welcome, Celeste. Sadhu. Welcome. Okay, Emily, welcome. Okay, wow. Well done, Reddit. That's hilarious. Didn't know we were on that. Okay, yeah. Welcome, Jason. Go online. All right. Okay, welcome, everyone. We hope you do feel really at home. It's a beautiful community and a lot of lovely, really sincere people here. All of you are welcome. As most of you know, monastics in my tradition, we don't touch money, we don't use money. Everything here is freely offered. Please take some of the books in the back. There's some wonderful ones. The really big one, that Stillness Flowing, I think we're getting 2 per week. So that's worth getting. It's a really good book. If you haven't gotten a name tag, really consider getting one. Right on both sides, because they, strange amount of the time, tend to flip around so you can't actually see what they are. Thank you, Greg. Yes, I've noticed. Name tags are very helpful. People have brought food to share. Please eat it, or else they will be, I don't know, disappointed or something. It's really beautiful to share that. And once again, we just encourage you to speak with one another, get to know each other, and really rejoice in having Kalinamita spiritual friends. Those who want to bow to the Buddha can. As Matt says, no pressure except for the 90 people bowing right beside you. And we'll wave goodbye to our friends on Zoom. Okay, and Zoom people may be able to stay on for a coffee hour if you want. Thank you all.
Hello, everybody. We'll just wait a minute until those who decided not to join us have a chance to depart. And the Clear Mountain, I believe, needs to end the streaming service. I don't know if I can do that.